Well, this last year has been fun, really fun. The loss hurt, but I did take this opportunity to reacquaint myself with an old friend of mine by the name of Selina Meyer.
Oh, fuck me.
Congressman Ryan, I want to let you know that I will destroy you in ways that are so creative, they will honor me for it at the Kennedy Center.
We are going to make Buddy Calhoun the next governor of this dried coyote turd of a state. So saddle up those emphysema tanks, you inbred cousin fuckers.
Mike, are you kidding me with this?
Ma'am, it's the only sunscreen I could find
You
here.
look like the world's least fucked geisha.
Look at us, just like the good old days, except shittier in every conceivable way.
Indeed.
I'm proud to be here for
National Volunteer Week.
National Volunteer Week.
I also do wallpaper.
Just when you thought this refugee camp couldn't get any better, I got a surprise for you.
But,
You're surrounded by landmines. You're just like Princess Di.
okay, you know what? Why don't you just go ahead, though?
What?
Yep.
Yeah,
Good idea.
You go ahead.
We'll be right behind you.
Yeah. You're using an awful lot of paint for down there. Maybe use it for up here and focus on
yeah,
this.
let's give the people what they want.
Okay, that's really
I'm sorry, that was too
way
much.
out of line.
Dan the asshole.
Dan the asshole.
Guys, I get a lot of people on the stage, a lot of shows that I like. I was telling him backstage, and I really mean it. Veep is my favorite show on television. It's the only show that makes me laugh as hard as it makes me laugh. It's so fantastic.
Thank you very much.
And last season was, in my opinion, its best season. No disrespect to Armando Iannucci. I love that guy.
You agree?
But I thought last season was a masterpiece of comedy and television. You had new showrunners. Talk to me about the process there.
It was strange. You know, like our show, for those who don't know, was conceived by the genius Armando Iannucci, who, dude, all right, we're gonna talk. Who really is like a mad scientist, and like to conceive of the show and the way he ran the show was so unique. It was so unlike anything any of us in the cast had ever done.
Wait, give me an example.
He had this, and still has this really unique process of writing and then inviting the actors into that process, which might not sound like a whole lot, but in the world of television, you don't really get a whole lot of rehearsal. We would have weeks of rehearsal. So he would give us scripts, and a lot of times you hear about, showrunners or TV shows being very secretive with their material and only doling it out in small chunks to the actors, only for the scenes that they need to be in. We were the opposite. We would get 5, 6 episodes in advance and rehearse it for weeks and really hone it. And we'd improvise all the way through it, and then the writers would go back and rewrite to incorporate our improv, and thereby just sort of give it this element of authenticity. Armando was big on sort of like hitting this roadmap and saying, these are the points of the plot or the character or whatever the situation is that we need to hit, but put it in your own words and just get us there. And
I'm gonna say, that's why I think the show is so fantastic sometimes as well. It's one of the reasons is that it always feels surprising, and it never feels like it's working to model itself after the writing. It feels organic.
Exactly.
Consistently.
Yeah, and that was a huge mandate right out of the box. In fact, like the one note that we always got from Armando in the beginning was, throw it away, do less, do less, do less. Like, own it, but you don't have to hit the joke. Just like forget the joke. It's not even about the joke. It's about the reaction to the joke, which you can even see in the way that the show is cut. Someone might have a scathing remark. Before it's even out of their mouth, the camera whips over to the person who's receiving the remark, and you get to see their reaction, because it's all about how we would feel receiving some of these comments.
Or often, I think, and I think of one character in particular who it'll take me forever to describe his position as a supporting character, who has to throw out the scathing remarks about him all the time for his boss. His boss always says, "What do I call you?
Yeah.
What are you?"
Yeah.
And it's like the remark is coming from the person hurt by it.
Will and Senator Furlong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, it's there, and watching Dan Bacadal do his Senator Furlong stuff, it's just, it's the best. It's the best. I actually, because Dan works a lot on a bunch of other shows, so we're very lucky when we can get him, and sometimes we can't get him for the table reads, and I've been given the honor of being able to read his part at the table reads, which is just so fun to just curse that blue streak. Dan's pretty vulgar as it is, but I mean, compared to Furlong, it's nothing.
Reid, I gotta ask. I've interviewed you a few times. You're the nicest guy. Where does Dan come from? You don't seem like a dick, at least for like the 22 minutes that I get to sit with you, which I guess is like good on you. You can hold it back for 22 minutes.
This is legit choking. I'm so surprised I've never gotten that comment before.
Where do you find Dan?
God, he must be in there somewhere. Like any character, there's a little bit of you in there, and you try to just, find the elements, that pertain to the character and just dial them up if you have to. The thing that's fun about playing Dan is that he gets to do things and say things and behave in a way that, I'm sure a lot of us would like to do that at some point, just because it might feel good to exercise those demons, but we never actually would because it's a horrible way to live.
Oh, no, I have said about Veep, when a season finishes, I always say generally, like, I wish I could live in that show. Like, those are the people that I want to work with. That's the kind of thing that I want to do. Is just everybody is kind of doing their best, but also just being vicious to each other.
Oh, it's
the whole
awful.
time they're doing
It's
it.
just awful. I mean, calling someone, Dan, I think I had the comment to Jonah that he looks like melted Play-Doh on a flagpole. I mean, it's just like, you would never say that to anybody and then continue to ride in the car with that person, So yeah, I don't know. He's like I said, he's probably in there a little bit somewhere, but it's just such fun to be able to go to work and to get all this out. I mean, the cast by and large, I mean, everyone is just the sweetest. They're the best. They're so nice. They're so smart. They're so funny. We've all gotten very close. Like, we've gone on like vacations and stuff together. Yeah, it's really cool.
Who have you gone on vacation with?
Tony Hale and his wife, and myself and my wife, Tim Simons and his wife, and Matt Walsh and his wife. We all took a ski trip to Aspen a couple years ago, but we do like little golf outings and stuff together. I mean, our kids.
So, okay, there was no moment where it was like, Matt, like, please don't cook our eggs or anything like that?
Do you know about Matt Walsh?
No, I just used that name.
He's awful.
He's a nice guy.
No. See, he's got everybody fooled, man.
I only get 22 minutes with all of you. If you can't hold it in for 22 minutes,
he's the worst. Matt, don't spend any time with Matt Walsh. Of course, I'm kidding. Matt's like the greatest guy.
So season 4 ends. Armando Iannucci and his crew of writers, for the most part, walk away from the show. And David Mandel from Seinfeld.
From Seinfeld and from Curbed.
And from Curb,
Yeah.
comes on the show. Obviously, he had a relationship with Julia from before and with HBO. What was that like? What happened there?
It was interesting. I mean, there's, I don't know if, off the top of my head if I can think of any other shows that have switched regimes. Well, it's a terrible word to use right now. Have switched teams like that, mid-stride. It's pretty unprecedented. They were up against a huge task. It was right after season 4. We had just won the Emmy, which was kind of a shock. But I mean, we're all so proud of Armando and his writers. So David and his guys came in after that, and it's like, how do you live? I mean, we were there for rehearsal. I think they were so nervous. The day after the Emmy, so the day after we've been like up partying all night, celebrating, they're like, yeah, we really want to get a rehearsal with you guys. Can you guys come in real early in the morning? We just want to like try some stuff out. And we're like, oh, Jesus. So we go in there, and because I think they saw, how do we top that? And to their credit, and I still don't know how they did it, they are just some of the heaviest hitting comedy writers in all of Hollywood. I mean, it's like a murderer's row of the funniest men and women in television right now. And they just crushed it. Like, not even sort of like, oh, good, we're still maintaining something and we haven't lost a lot of speed and, oh, this is like the learning curve season or anything. The exact opposite. They elevated it. They brought a whole new perspective to it. They honored all the things that we had done in the past, even the process, which was new to them as well. So we had a lot of rehearsal. We had a lot of time with the material, a lot of improvisation. And I think, speaking for the rest of the cast, or I'll speak for myself, but I'm sure that they would agree, the fact that we were all given from a very early point in the process this custodianship of our characters because we were let into this writing process, I think the writers did a great job of reaching out to us and leaning on us a little bit, being like, so this is what we have for Dan. Does this ring true? which is, it sounds like a very obvious thing, but in the world of, you know, of entertainment and specifically production, oftentimes people are very precious about their position, about their job, and David and his guys, I mean, just blew it up.
I mean, I look at season 5
impressed.
as some of the best comedy writers having something to prove, because it's beyond good when you watch it. Like you said, I mean, not to just echo what you're saying, but it doesn't just feel like people doing their job. There are lines in that show that are a masterpiece in and of themselves. There are insults that are masterpiece insults that you can imagine a group of comedy writers crafting that insult till 1 o'clock in the morning. Just be like, how do we tighten this dick joke just a little bit better, you know? And it all comes across in that
Tightening dicks, that's what we do.
dick jokes.
Dick jokes. Oh, sorry.
Dick jokes. Now, obviously, you guys are in the middle of shooting the season, right?
We just wrapped, actually.
Well, no, when you were. I'm going.
Oh, sorry, when we were, yeah.
When you were in the middle of shooting the season, something happened, and Donald Trump won the presidency. He won the election. I don't know if you had your smartphone on you, if you checked Twitter that day, or if you've been watching. Have you just been buried in Veep stuff?
Oh my God. Oh, jeez.
And I know the show.
Would it were that easy to just sort of mind wipe, right?
Yeah, I get so weirded out when I talk to people who aren't like abreast of like all the news that day, because I'm just like, what else are you doing?
Yeah.
How can you not just be reading the news all day? And they're like,
Our guys were shooting, yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know, man, it's just another president. You're like, no. Okay, fine, whatever. Anyway, so going back to this, obviously the show doesn't identify political parties. We don't know her political party, Dan's political party, or even Jonah's or anything like that. And it's not commenting on the politics of the day. Mm-hmm. But what were the conversations that you guys were having on set? Did you address it? Were you talking about addressing it, or were you just like, no, just stay the course?
We definitely talked about addressing it. I mean, those bigger conversations are a little above my pay grade. But, you know, because we're a very inclusive company, they kept us abreast of how we were going to, because we had those questions as we were turning to David and the guys. It's like, what do we do now? And I think they made a really inspired choice to, I'll back up for a second. Veep has never really been like a ripped from the headlines kind of show anyway, just like you said. We don't really try to ape anything that's specifically going on, even though I think we almost like beaten history to the punch with some gaffes. Like we've invented some gaffes and like some weird shit that's happened with our guys, and then like bang, and actually happens in Congress or something like that, which is disturbing that we're predicting this horrible future.
Well, all you got to do is meet those people, and you can predict how they're going to fall.
Oh my God, yeah, totally. It's like any roll of the dice. It's like we get it.
Oh, you're an asshole. You're going to stick your foot in your mouth in the next month.
In 5, 4. So with this season, I think we steered clear in a way. I mean, like, look, you can't be a political show and not, you know, connect the dots a little bit. Like, there's certainly some references to personality types or, you know, vague situations, but at no point are we like, you know, we don't even refer to any of the past presidents in the world of our show. I think we got like a little Veep history lesson that I think the last president that we refer to by name historically is Reagan. And after that, everyone's fictional.
Oh, that's such a weird idea about America.
Isn't that weird?
As well.
Yeah.
Because that's when people on the right describe neoliberalism forming with George W. Bush, or George H.W., then Clinton, then George W. They say that that's when or at least, you know, the right wing says that's when the regime forms, the elitist regime. Yeah. So stopping there for a comedy show, that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, and again, it was a decided choice to sort of leave us in this limbo that we could, you know, paint the canvas any way we wanted. So, you know, there's no character that's supposed to be Trump. We don't talk about, you know, even the woman, the president or the character that does become president when Selina loses the election, she's not necessarily supposed to be anybody. Selina wasn't modeled after anybody. So we steer clear in a way, and we sort of let the audience kind of fill in what they may care to infer.
That said, while it's not based off of anybody that we know of or any particular political party, when the show started, you guys did your research and went around Washington, and you have advisors like Frank Rich. I mean, he's not even really an advisor, right? I mean, he's a producer on the show.
He's an executive producer.
He's an executive producer on the show. Yeah. So you've met, I think I heard Timothy Simon say that he met a Dan. He's met Dan.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, we did. It was, man, that was a weird experience. We all got invited to the press correspondence dinner. Because it was right. You're not going?
And they do great things. The White House correspondents, they do actually do very good things.
It's an interesting event. It's a really interesting event. We were all saying that it's like the things that Hollywood does, really well 10 times a week, patting themselves on the back and throwing some award ceremony that, DC does terribly one day a year. Like, it was such a shit show. It's run so terribly. The security's crazy. People are literally falling all over themselves. No one knows if you're coming or going. So anyway, we're there. And the whole thing was weird. I was sitting at a table between Nancy Pelosi on my right and Linda Evangelista.
Who's Linda Evangelista?
The supermodel, the former supermodel. And I'm like, this couldn't be weirder. I mean, so like the political wonk in me is like wanting to lean over and talk to Nancy Pelosi, and then like the 17-year-old boy in me is sort of like, so that George Michael video was really important video for me when I was a kid. It was so weird, and the whole weekend's like that. But yeah, so we were in the green room, and one of the cool things is that it's you're mixing it up with everybody. So there's politicians, there's journalists, there's actors, directors, writers. I mean, it's kind of amazing, all these people in the same room. And some of these DC movers and shakers are there, and Rolling Stone had come out with an article naming who they thought the actual Veep counterparts would be in DC. And this one guy whose name escapes me right now, which I should have it burned into my brain because he was such a shit.
This is on paper who they thought.
This is on. You can find this, please.
Someone please look it up so we can throw his name out publicly.
If only we had the technology to look up any bit of
All of you have the
information at
technology.
any time. So Rolling Stone came out with this article, and they named this one guy the Dan, and he was there. And Tim Simons is talking to him, and the guys were like, "Yeah, so Rolling Stone said that I guess like I'm the Dan guy." And Tim was like, "Oh yeah, Reid Scott plays me. He's right over there. You should meet him." And he's like, "Why doesn't he come over here and meet me?" And Tim was like, "Okay." So he goes over and he gets me. He's like, "Do you want to meet the guy that Rolling Stone?" I was like, "Yeah, totally. Let's meet this dude." And I meet him and I shake his hand, and he's sort of like those awful kind of like limp handshake where it's not. It's just sort of like so non-committal. Like, yeah, I'll touch you, but I don't really care.
Might as well be like kiss the ring. Like, it's
a little bit
disgusting,
of that.
Yeah.
And he sort of like, he looks me up and down, and he goes, "I guess I see it," and just walks away. Yeah. And I was like, that guy is fucking perfect.
What were this guy's credentials? Was he?
He was a lobbyist, I believe. He was much like Dan. I don't know if he was ever like a communications guy, but I think he was. He worked for a congressman or woman, and was just like a policy guy or something like that who basically fell into lobbying, which is partially where we got the idea for Dan to get into lobbying.
And thinks his shit doesn't stink, basically.
Exactly, yeah. But it was so arrogant, just so, sometimes something so perfect just happens and you see it.
Does Veep have the same effect that like Wall Street had on bankers, in the sense that like none of the people in Wall Street got that Michael Douglas was the villain, and they all thought that they were Michael Douglas? Do you find that happens with Veep as well, with people that work in politics? Like, I'm the Dan, yeah, me, and you're like, no, Dan's an asshole. Like, you don't want to be the Dan.
That's actually, yes, that exact thing has happened several times, where someone's like, oh, we work for Congressman, so and so. Everyone says that I'm the Jonah, or everyone says that I'm the Dan, and it's like, don't tell people that. That's not
We're actually in your position to help us.
Yeah.
Like, don't do that.
Yeah. But yeah, something you said earlier too, like no one knows what party it is. When we meet people, and that's one of the great things about the show over the years, is the access that we've gotten to do research and meet real congressmen and women and senators and their staffs and lobbyists and people who know some deep state secrets.
Say deep state?
Deep, yeah, deep state. Which they were also like way too willing to divulge some information to us early on. It was really kind of creepy. But I forgot where I was going with this for a second.
People who think that they're part. Like,
Oh, yeah, sorry. So whenever we meet someone from the right, they're always like, "Oh, we love what you guys are doing to the Democrats." And they're like, okay. And then we'll meet someone from the left and they're like, get those Republicans, guys. We're like, okay. They all think we're making fun of the other party.
That's so weird because I'm pretty liberal, and I've always seen the show as, and I know it doesn't say for specific reasons, but I've always seen the show to be about a Democratic administration simply because they were careerists and not just totally corrupt, batshit crazy assholes. Like they were just careerists. They were like career politicians.
Yes. I don't honestly. Both of those descriptions, I think, apply to both sides of the aisle.
Well, I always feel like I can notice who is kind of a Republican in the show, and who is kind of a Democrat.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, we've got a hint at both. But again, I think one of the smart things which allows us to just be malleable and just sort of like play with everything is you don't want to call anything out too specifically because then you're married to it. So it's been fun to be able to. Even our characters, you never quite know. I mean, some days she leans red, some days she leans, blue, and part of the fun is being able to just sort of pick and choose what we think is the funnier way to skewer the issue.
Yeah, I would say my interpretation is by no means the truth. It's just my cynical interpretation of political.
It's an alternative fact, is what you're saying.
It is an alt fact.
Yeah,
an alt fact. That's right. Well, you're the guy with the deep state secrets, so.
No, it was funny. Like in the beginning, we would take out these young staffers and just get them drunk. Really, just be like, no, tell us what it's really like, working for your boss. And they would all. First of all, they were all really young, which was sort of scary. It's like these are the boys and girls who are writing policy for their districts back home, and their congressmen or woman or senator or whatever, like they're taking all the credit. So these kids right out of college. All of them are off the charts intelligent. All of them. And then they like to party. Like when they're allowed to drink, there's like, just give us the booze, man. It's been such a rough day. Just give us the booze. So we, a bunch of actors taking them out, like just plying them with.
They know how to party too, or are they the type of hyper intelligent workaholics that like get a little booze in them, and you're like, oh, come on, man, be cool.
Yeah,
like, take it down.
That's exactly what it is. Like they're so stressed out. They're so just like frazzled by their days that by the time they drink, they don't drink to like take the edge off or like enjoy the flavor of that Pinot with that delicious steak. It's like they're drinking to get drunk.
Don't say that to her. That's not. Don't do that.
Yeah. Well, they all sat down at the table. We took these, I think it was 3 or 4 staffers out, and they all sat down and they all have 2 cell phones. And they took both of their cell phones, they sort of lay them face down on the table. It's almost like a gunslinger, like taking their guns off, be like, we're not gonna have any violence tonight. And it's like, okay, great. And then they would just sort of say, what do you wanna know? And just tell us everything. Okay. And they would just sort of plow through. So it's like, you shouldn't have said that. Oh, you shouldn't have said that. And
did you ever feel like they were, because I've heard stories from.
We don't know where the aliens are. I mean,
people.
I know I'm going to get that question.
Like people who work on Homeland and other shows where they meet with folks from the CIA and from the intelligence community. And they say that, what's fun about meeting with them is that the first hour of what they give you is what they want you to put into the show. And then you have to sort of look between the lines for what is actually interesting and maybe the truth. But it's all kind of like their spin and what they would like to see, how they would like to see their party or their politics depicted.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, look, everyone wants to cast themselves in the most positive light, and when they think you're actually going to use something, like, oh my God, they're going to base the character on me. You want to make yourself look more important and all that kind of stuff.
Not the Dan. He didn't want that.
Not the Dan.
Like,
no, he's
just be an asshole. That's fine.
He's like, leave me alone so I can make my money and do my thing.
Let's get some questions from the audience. Who was right here?
Your show has caused me pain. I've literally.
You're welcome.
Knee slapping. I mean, I punched my knee. Like, I totally agree. This is the latest season was the funniest thing. I saw over 100 films last year. I think the last season of Veep was better than any film I saw last year.
Wow, thank you.
I just finished my MA at NYU in cinema studies. I see a lot of movies. Veep is amazing. I wanted to know, this far along, how do you keep the show fresh and funny and new?
That's a great question. It's not without a lot of work. I mean, our writers absolutely, they deserve way more credit than I think they have even gotten, which is a lot, but they're true geniuses. To keep it fresh, I mean, again, it sort of goes back to, because we're not ripping from the headlines, because we're just sort of borrowing or insinuating from the headlines, there's always going to be headlines. There's always something happening. There's, you know, and even though we're not trying to recreate it or ape it, I mean, this is politics we're talking about. There is an endless supply of stupid shit. It's just so great. And then to keep us energized, as you guys, I'm really excited for everyone to see this season because it takes a turn that I feel like the show needed to at just the right time. It sort of like refreshes all the characters. All I can say is, and you know, you guys, this doesn't give anything away. You know, she loses the election at the end of last season, and like all administrations that are sort of ousted, everyone kind of, you know, scatters. They all jettison themselves and go off in different directions, and that gave us an opportunity this season to dig down a little further on each character and learn more about even our own characters.
What did you learn about Dan?
Dan is so shallow, there wasn't very far to go. A lot. Again, I don't want to give it. I can't.
No, but
can't say
the
too
thing is,
much.
like, I don't know if Dan is Dan shallow. I mean, he's a really smart guy, and he knows how to manipulate and spin and fuck with things. But is someone who can do that? Are they necessarily shallow?
No. I mean, look, I guess shallow sort of emotionally. You know, like he's like you said, yes, he is a smart guy, and
I'm excited for Dan's like Buddhist retreat season, where like he kind of is just like has that breakdown again.
Like Don Draper, he wants to buy the world of Coke.
Yeah, exactly. We're in this generation of Pepsi. Sorry.
Yeah, totally. Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the fun things about Dan is, you know, you always kind of know what you're going to get. And we sort of tease at things. It's like, oh, maybe he's turning a corner. Maybe he's learning something about himself and the world around him. And I mean, it's one of the things that Veep does so well is we take it to the point where you feel like it's going to get serious, where it feels like, you know what, someone's going to learn something. Something is going to, you know, make a change for the better. Someone is going to actually step up to the plate. Nope. Like right at that moment, it's like, oh, they're going to fuck it up in their own self-interest. And that's exactly how we do it.
Right here.
Hey,
Hi.
so I know you've been at it for a long time, but you're working with legendary, funny people. I wonder, is it ever intimidating?
Yes, absolutely. I mean,
Did you have a comedy background before Veep?
no. Well, I had worked in comedy, you know, quite a bit, which I found intimidating from the very beginning. Like when I first started working, I was really surprised. I was booking these comedies. And I was terrified because I was like, man, I'm going to show up and they're going to find out that I'm not funny. You know, I thought everyone that worked on a comedy show was a comedian that like had some proper background, could just spin jokes and do their things, because the few people that I had worked with were just so blindingly funny and had those backgrounds with, you know, Second City or SNL or, you know, or whatever. And I was very intimidated by that. I think the way I sort of like stumbled through comedies, I just took it super seriously and just like overcommitted to everything all the time. I think probably, you know, casting directors or whatever was sort of like, God, look at the pain he's in. Like, he's really believing this. But yeah, with the show like Veep, I mean, I was intimidated by Julia, you know, the first time I met her, because, I mean, fucking Seinfeld, you know? I mean, like, what she did with that character is nothing less of iconic. I mean, that entire show was. And come to find out, she's, you know, a total regular gal. She's a jeans and T-shirt kind of gal who is very generous. And she gets nervous. I mean, she told us flat out, she was like, oh my God, day one of shooting, she's like, I'm so nervous. But we all gelled so instantly. I think the hardest part was learning how to insult everybody right out of the gate. It's like, you know, oh, hi, my name's Reid. Oh, you know, hi. You know, I'm Tim. Great. I'm going to be calling you Jolly Green Jizz Face, apparently. So they, don't worry about it, man. I got tough skin. Okay, I'll buy you a beer afterwards. Like, that was intimidating. But then, of course, we got used to it.
Julia
quick.
also, I mean, I know, I just get this from the Seinfeld outtakes that were put online, but Julia she's a breaker, right? She laughs a lot.
We all laugh a lot. I mean, no one laughs like Tony Hale. Tony Hale is like, and when he goes everybody goes because it's just infectious. And the two of them crack each other up constantly.
He's amazing this season. There's an anger seething in his character this season that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
I love it.
And again, we like I said, we dig down on all of these characters, so you get to see some stuff about Gary and Dan and Jonah and Amy, like everybody. It's a nice little peek behind the curtain of these characters. It's fun.
Let's get one more question before we wrap things up. Right here.
Hey, Reid.
Hi.
So I was reading that after your first pilot, you got into SAG, but then you went broke. And how hard was it to get back on your feet and like get work again?
I went broke getting into SAG. Like that's what broke me. I love my union.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
You guys are the best. No, but it was, I was a bartender, and the first job that I got, I did this pilot for ABC, and that Steve Levitan, the creator of Modern Family, had written, and I was basically playing a young Steve, and it was my first real job, and I got paid like no money for it. I was just happy to have the work, and I mean, I blew the money buying like 2 pairs of sneakers and like a Coke, basically. And because it was my first real job, I had to join SAG, and so I had to pay the dues and all that kind of stuff. And I remember like, wow, I just like zeroed out my bank account doing that. But I was very lucky in that even though the pilot didn't get picked up, people at Fox and at ABC, said, we think you might be right for this, you might be right for that. And I started to like string together little bits of work. It's the kind of thing where it's such a catch-22. Like you can't get the work until you've already gotten the work. Like no one wants to hire you until someone else has hired you. But there is something that's sort of like once you kind of break that seal, it starts to ramp up. But a lot of it, and I try to tell this to like, any young actor, writer, director, artist in general, is like, you are your product, you are your art. So even if someone's not paying you to do your work, there's work that you can be doing to make it better. And especially now, like I encourage anybody who's into this, like you got a cell phone, like shoot something. Like there's so many talented people out there that now have access to this kind of thing. It's so much fun to watch. I mean, like the cameras have gotten so good, and I think so many people are starting to realize that they actually have a voice with this. So, yeah, I just encourage people to keep trying and keep playing around.
Do you guys are you guys slated for more seasons of Veep after this one, or is it this one and then you sign on for the next ones? What's going on?
I think there's a lot of interest in another season. I know that we certainly feel that we have more story to tell. So yeah, I think we're going to do more. I hope we do more.
Well, I can't wait to finish watching this season and everybody else take a look at it. Premieres Sunday at 10:30
right.
on HBO. Reid Scott, everybody. Reid, thanks so much.